Most breaches are caused by exploiting oversights in basic cybersecurity fundamentals, but complex hybrid multi-cloud infrastructures make cybersecurity hygiene challenging. Red Seal can help. It shows you what's on your network, how it's connected, and the associated risk across public cloud, private cloud, and physical environments. With Red Seal, you'll get control of your cybersecurity fundamentals so you can protect your organization from the inevitable attack vectors and reduce your cyber risk. For more information, visit securityweekly.com/Red Seal. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Paul Asadorian. We're going to have our second interview in Broadcast Alley at RSA Conference 2020. Jinan Budge leads Forrester's offerings for security and risk professionals in Asia Pacific. She covers research on the role of the CISO, specializing in topics related to CISO leadership skills, managing politics, security strategy, budgets, and presenting to the board. Jinan, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
When we got the email, I went to Paul and I said, I think it would be interesting to bring some of the analysts that are out here onto the show. We do meet with some of them. Sandy Carielli was on Application Security Weekly because she covers the AppSec space. And when I got the profiles, I'm like, I want Jinan on. I want to talk CISO.
Awesome.
Yes. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So let me preface something, and I'm curious on your thoughts, and then we can kind of go into some of the different aspects. In 2015, Paul and I worked together at Tenable, and I ran strategy, and one of the things that the founders asked me at the time was build our 5-year strategy plan. And when I did that, I looked at not only technology, but I looked at the people side, like what roles were going to shift and change. And back then, I made some pretty interesting predictions that the role of the CISO was going to change dramatically from an operational role more to a governance role. And my philosophy behind that is we outsource more of our applications to the cloud, and cloud providers were bringing certain security tools. Governance became a driving force behind the CISO role and managing third-party relationships and a lot of other things. I'm curious, how close was I?
Look, it's really interesting. We wrote a similar report at Forrester. I'm trying to remember the year. I think it was around 2014. My colleague Andrew Rose wrote it, and it won some awards. And it was actually around the move of the CISO from operational to governance. And it was awesome. I love that report. It was like move on or face extinction or something really quite controversial. So love the concept. However, I have matured, and I think the industry has matured a little bit over that very short period of time. I've been in security for 20 years, and I remember when I first entered the profession, you could either be a pen tester or a policy person. CISOs did not really exist 20 years ago, but I know we don't want to go back for that long. 2010, I was with Forrester leading our leadership board for CISOs globally. And I had an image of CISOs being either operational or governance or technical and non-technical. And I feel like that's become really unhelpful. And it's become unhelpful for a number of reasons. I just think the span of the CISO role is so huge at the moment, and it depends on so many different things. How much attention is your organization paying to cybersecurity, the funding that you have, and the type of person that you are. So we've just recently published research that, thank goodness, is moving us away from that technical, non-technical operational governance. We've identified 6 types of CISOs to make it a little bit, let's get real about this. This is such a complex topic. You've got transformational CISOs, you've got post-breach CISOs, you've got operational CISOs that love solving technical problems. They love solving problems full stop. You've got the compliance guru, you've got the customer-facing evangelist, and none of them are as black and white, at least in my mind, as technical or non-technical.
And you may have 2 of those in your organization or all 6, right? We shouldn't limit our organization to say you have to have one CISO and that's it. That's all you get.
No, absolutely. And if you're a CISO, and I think, one of the other things I'm doing a lot of research on is the topic of burnout and stress for CISOs. And I think what tends to happen at the moment is CISOs will go into an organization having one personality. So for example, for myself, when I was a practitioner, I'm very much a transformational CISO. You take me to an organization that actually does not want a transformation, guess what happens?
Yeah.
You become exhausted, the amount of fatigue, and I see it over and over again. And when you look at some of the data that's coming out of the tenure of the CISO being 26 months at the moment, I think it's a huge part of it. I think we are placing ourselves in the wrong organizations. We're not... We don't have that self-awareness.
So you bring up a really interesting point, both for organizations and the CISOs themselves, in that during the interview process, you really need to figure out this alignment of what kind of CISO am I and what kind of CISO is this organization looking for to really see if there is a match for success. Because with 6 different profiles, you're going to have varying degrees of what organizations are looking for, and if you find a mismatch, then that burnout's going to happen faster. That transition to another job is going to continue to happen faster.
Correct. It's not a win-win situation, and there are certain questions that we all need to be asking in the interviews of the organization, but of ourselves. I think one of the big questions CISOs need to be, if you're someone who's considering becoming a CISO, for example, you've got to ask yourself the question, am I ready to be a leader? Because guess what? It's a leadership role. This is no longer, regardless of what type of CISO, regardless of whether you agree with my 6 types or not, you're a CISO, you are a leader. You are a leader of people. You're a leader of change within organizations. This is not a security technician. We've recently started asking a question in our data of what do you do as a CISO during your day? What does your day consist of? 13% only is dedicated to security and operational tasks.
I feel very strongly, and my prediction is that not just the CISO role, but security in general will get less operational over time. I've been a security practitioner for over 20 years, and especially early on, and even today in certain circumstances, most circumstances, security has to be operational and highly technical and hands-on. But I think a much better approach is to have the other areas of the organization doing the operations with security in mind. Security then becomes more of a research and advisory role. But I also think that CISOs need to understand the operational aspects of the business and the compliance and the policy, right, and all of that. But I think the practitioners in security need to be less operational. Do you agree that that's a better place to move towards?
I think we absolutely need to have a little bit of both. I think for so long, unfortunately, we've neglected the human side. We have neglected the non-operational side. I don't think that's sustainable. It hasn't been sustainable. It has not helped us. We need champions through the organizations to push through security initiatives. We also need that culture of security. I do a lot of research on, broadly speaking, awareness, behavior, and culture, but I refuse to limit that to awareness and training. We're talking about actual culture change where people will want to do exactly what you're suggesting, which is to actually either do parts of security themselves or champion or support the security teams.
Bill Gates' email, right? Back many years ago when he was like, if you are in the code and you find a security hole, you are to stop everything you're doing and address that, right? Yeah. That was in that one email, Bill Gates changed the culture of Microsoft, right? And we've seen great improvement. I mean, no software company is perfect, right? Yeah. But we've seen great improvements. Yeah. And to your point, it was a change of culture. It wasn't that they hired more CISOs, more technical CISOs, or more security folks. Yeah. It was a cultural change.
Yeah, cyber influence. I mean, in Australia, we've got a huge security influence and trust community, and cyber influence is becoming a function within organizations to do exactly some of the things that you're suggesting. And one of the things that I'm seeing and loving at the moment is extending cybersecurity culture outside of organizations, so to people's homes, to customers, to our customers, help them with some of their security issues. That is going to put the CISO in a whole new light, because as we know, if we're talking about predictions, our predictions for 2020 for cybersecurity, now it's become personal. Now, cybersecurity is not just impacting organizations, it's impacting all of us, our homes, our families, it's impacting society. And if you are going to be a modern day forward-thinking CISO, that's how you've got to think, and you've got the responsibility for all of society, actually. So how do you do that? How do you do that if all you're doing is operational? No, that cultural conversation is huge. Yeah. It's so exciting.
And we were talking security awareness a little bit, because I know part of your coverage, we had an interesting interview a few weeks back that for security awareness programs to work, they have to attach to the heart, not the head.
The hearts and minds.
Right. That it has to be personal, and you have to have an appreciation because it has an impact to you as a person, which you were just describing. And then how can CISOs around the world really embrace, how do you create security appreciation and that kind of personal impact to security, not only at your employees, maybe your customers as well, but that makes the role and the job probably a lot easier if we had more of that appreciation for the impact to the person.
Oh my God. I mean, how do you get budget for security? How do you talk to boards about cybersecurity? I know I've been to so many conferences and so many talks on, well, these are the metrics that you present to the board members. Scrap all of that I say. I actually did some research, how to talk to boards about cybersecurity, but I interviewed board members. And the gap between what board members think of security, what they want to know about cybersecurity, and what we give them, it's quite unbelievable. And one of the things is you've got to humanize this conversation as well as all conversations about security, and you do that exactly what you said. You make it personal. You create engaging situations, experiences for those board members. I know from my experience and from talking to hundreds of CISOs around the world, once you build that relationship, that hearts and minds engagement, budget comes. It's not about the metrics. It's not to dismiss that,
right?
But they are part of the equation. But you've got to go there.
It seems like we're missing that part of the equation that's relating to people in a way.
Politics and understanding that, in security. So once you get me started, I'm not going to stop. So
that's
please
fine. We're good for another good 20 minutes. So just keep going.
Feel free to interrupt. But this is so big for me. I wrote this research on how CISOs manage politics within organizations. And for me, this was cathartic. This was based on my prior experiences and how many gray hairs I got just purely from the shock of, oh my God, my job now is to navigate my way around this organization, first and foremost, organizations. And security people, CISOs, we are not comfortable with the word politics. We think it's dirty. It's a dirty word because of what we see on television. It's not our personalities. It's not our training. But actually, it's a part of life. And, I started interviewing CEOs and CROs, and they were like, politics is your biggest opportunity. Politics is such a positive thing. And it's such a game changer if you can start thinking of yourself as a leader.
Well, and I think what in our research and doing this show, in speaking of politics, it also kind of speaks to empathy, right? I think to be successful in the political battle, if you will, or an organization, you have to have a tremendous amount of empathy, and you're not going to get things done as a CISO or really any other leadership position if you don't have that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, and through my interviews and experience, that came out so strongly. You've got 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them accordingly. And, the whole idea of politics is not what we see on television. It is actually the opportunity to listen to people's problems, to empathize with them, and
hopefully come up with a solution.
And go to a win-win. And that's not how we think of it. And there are tactics that you can use for all of these things that we're talking about.
Interesting. So as we think about the 6 CISO profiles,
Yeah.
what are some of the leadership skills? Do they vary across those 6 profiles? Are there commonalities that you see in each of those profiles? I'm curious, kind of the skill set.
I think they vary. And, it's really interesting. When we were doing the research, I collaborated with my global colleague, Jeff Pollard, and my colleague from Europe, Paul Mackay, on doing this. And we were debating and, and I'm like, I started listing some leadership skills, and I hate this because it sounds like I'm doing a personality test, a Cosmo personality test. But yeah, I mean, absolutely it's going to vary. Again, if I look at myself, I put myself in the transformational CISO bucket. I have certain skills that would make me fantastic at that, such as a personality that does love a challenge, that does love change, that can push change through, that can communicate really well. I do not have probably the skills to be an operational CISO who can deal with the monotony of the day-to-day. I do not get excited about incidents. I am not the person to be on your side if there's an emergency. That is not my gig. So, I'm aware of that. So as a leader, you get to choose, do I want this role where I'm going to need to deal with incidents? If so, who's going to be on my leadership team to back up the shortcomings that I don't have?
Yeah, so when you laid out the profiles, I assumed you identified some of these characteristics and skill sets in there.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Because I think it's a really good exercise for anybody who is or wants to be a CISO to actually go through and say, what kind of CISO am I? Based on this, I'm this kind, right?
Yeah.
And I think that benefits both people who want to get into the role, but also people who are in the role who may realize that they're not in the right position because there's a mismatch of what the organization wants versus what they can provide.
Exactly. And it's like a game of perfect match. Yeah, absolutely. And, sometimes you want to be a compliance guru. There are some skills that you may have to build up. You may have to build up your regulatory knowledge, skills, whatever it is. Yeah, you can choose to either coach yourself in that or actually find the right fit for yourself.
This may sound weird on the surface, but there are a lot of things coming together for me doing this show for some time. Yeah. And it reminds me of a book that we read a long time ago. I say we because a lot of our listeners all read it at the same time. The Brain Audit by Sean D'Souza. It's about sales. I think in this role, many of the qualities that and kind of techniques that you would use in the sales process. And it sounds kind of shady, but it's not. It's about understanding your customers or your coworkers' needs, right?
Yep.
And convincing them of certain things. So Sean has been on the show, and he describes it as 7 bags, right? If you go to the airport with 7 bags, when you leave the whatever airport you're landing in, you're going to have all 7 bags, right? And one of those bags, and these are all part of the sales process. One is understanding of the problem. One is empathy. One is the risk reversal, right? Because people don't want to commit to purchasing something. A board is not going to want to commit money. They're essentially buying something unless you de-risk that investment for them, right? And there's 7 of them, right? That was just a small example. But now I kind of understand why, like Michael and others say in a leadership position, you have to understand that sales process.
You absolutely. I mean, again, you're a leader. Like you've got to do, whether you call it sales, whether you call it politics, whether you call it communications, marketing. Back in 2010, I think I called it marketing. You've got a market security. In terms of the skills, it's evolved a little bit for me from what I see the industry in the last 10 years. I remember around 2010, and I remember that time because it was a decade ago, and it was when I first joined Forrester for the first time. And the top challenge for CISOs at the time, with 54% of CISOs struggling with, was visibility and influence.
Yeah.
That back then was huge. We were jumping up and down, if you remember, to those days to get the attention.
Right.
Right now, that number has dropped. It's not even in the top 10 challenge. It's like down at 19 or 20% or something.
But is that because we were good at marketing, or is that because really bad things have happened in cybersecurity?
And I think
maybe both. Right?
I think the latter, to be honest. But I do think we evolved a little. So we started building that marketing, sales, communication skills. around 2015, I started seeing the skills that are starting to be required in a CISO going in around negotiation skills. So we started getting some serious attacks that were becoming very prominent. So the whole concept of negotiation skills and in working with or against adversaries, and that was just a different conversation altogether. That whole
That explains why
thing.
Michael made me read Never Split the Difference by, now I can't think of his name, Chris Vaughn, I believe. He was an FBI hostage negotiator. The book is really about empathy, right?
Right.
And negotiating and how empathy is really the main primary theme in that book. But there are a lot of that book is jam-packed with really good knowledge.
Yeah, so I think then it became negotiation. And then when I look back over the last couple of years and when I asked CISOs, hey, what's the number one skill that you feel like you have? And it depends what region in the world, because I think, we're all at very different levels.
Different
of
levels,
maturity. But right now, I think the number one skill that CISOs are talking about is personal resilience. So back to burnout and the stresses that come with being a CISO and playing politics, like at a very personal level. How do you survive this? How do you do it? How do you wake up every morning? You're not getting the funding that you need. You're losing people because someone else is paying them double.
And if you have a security incident, you're likely to be fired. Which I don't agree with, by the way. I don't know where you fall on this issue, but if it's my company and we have a CISO and we get hacked, that is battle experience for my CISO. I'm keeping that person, right? I mean, like, gross negligence aside, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that you have to factor that in. But usually that's not the case, right?
Scapegoat.
Exactly.
The CISOs are, and that's one of the many factors that's leading to burnout and exhaustion. And I think then the skill of personal resilience and working out the skills to de-stress yourself, to manage your stress level, maintain work-life balance, and that of your team become absolutely crucial.
Yeah. Those are all great tips and points. Paul, any additional questions?
No, it's awesome. They summarize a lot of the things we've talked about on the show over the years. So
we
really
didn't talk about diversity, which is interesting when we're talking about CISO leadership.
But so important for everyone in security to be very diverse in their backgrounds, in their skill sets. And, we see a lot of that too. And we have to be very analytical, like when we're looking for pieces of malware, when we're looking for the indicators of compromise, right? It's that creativity in people from different backgrounds that I believe really makes an effective security team. So especially for our industry, I think it's even more important than some other industries.
I think when we're talking about CISO leadership, though, and we're talking about resilience, I think one of the very important skills of leading people is being a great leader, knowing how to manage people, knowing how to have a team basically traverse all the way from the board to the SOC analyst. And one of the many ways that we can do that, obviously, is via bringing in diversity to cybersecurity. And it's been very interesting watching what's happening at RSA this year on that.
Well, I think it's a combination of not only embracing diversity, it's also embracing culture.
Absolutely.
You have a lot of multinational companies out there that have to deal with all the cultural differences. You have to be able to embrace all that to be successful in the role.
And bring it all together for the greater good.
Consistent way. Jinan, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you everyone for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.